His Majesty.
No, it's Theodore.
Oh.
Theodore is your real name?
Yes.
I had no idea.
Kind of keep that a secret here.
Oh.
Because I really you would go with it. Oh my goodness.
Sorry.
All right. No. It's okay. It's okay. You know, usually at work, we go back and forth and go. Richard C. Valdez.
Theodore J. Hicks.
There you go.
Not that his middle initial is J. You know.
You just make up some stuff, I
We
think.
just use the middle initial of J forever.
Yes.
It's like an ongoing joke. But Dr. Michelle and Rich, in the queue, we have none other than Mrs. Mildred Muhammad. It has been 15 years since we heard the story of John Allen Muhammad and the DC sniper. And I don't think much of America and abroad has heard, through one book, we heard somewhat of a story,
Right.
but there was a lot going on back then. Social media wasn't as prevalent. It was a different type of media delivering information to us. And there was a lot going on in the world of what she had to deal with in domestic abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things I don't remember that really coming out
No.
as being a factor in any of this. Of course, we heard about what her husband did and, the young man who he co-opted into committing the crimes with him. We heard all of that story. But, until Ms. Muhammad wrote the book, we didn't really hear about, what happened with her and what happened with the children.
Right. And that's the most important part is what happened to the children. So in 2009, there was a memoir that was written called Scared Silent. And it was widely played. And guess what? She's back again for I'm Still Standing. So I'd like to welcome author, speaker, advocate, and survivor Mildred Muhammad. Mildred, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Ted. How are you?
Pretty good. Mildred, also in studio, we have Rich Valdez and Dr. Michelle Reed, and we are all happy to have you on the line.
Thanks for joining us.
Nice to meet all of you.
Yes. Looking forward to speaking with you.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have the book here, I'm Still Standing, Crawling Out of the Darkness into the Light.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to go into allowing you to tell your story. Because it's a story that a lot of people like to think they know, but it's even better to hear it from you. So we're just going to open the mic for you, Mildred.
Okay. Well, as you stated earlier, everyone knows about the crime that John committed. But what most people don't know is what law enforcement told me, which was I was the intended target. I had been running for my life for 2 years. I was in hiding. I changed my name. I had to change my clothes. I was living in a shelter. He had already taken the children out of the country. They say you can't call it kidnapping because you can't kidnap your own children. But they put the legal term of custodial interference. And because we had not successfully gone to court to determine who would get custody of the children, on a weekend visitation, he took them out of the country to Antigua. At that time, I didn't know where they were, but there were people around us who helped him to take them by giving him money and helping him to leave the country. And when I questioned them about it, they told me that they didn't know where they were. They actually said to me, well, you need to just snap out of it. You're young, you can have more children. At least you just get to cook for one. So no one helped me to find them. He had already said that you have become my enemy, and as my enemy, I will kill you. So I didn't wait around to find out how he was going to do that. but none of my abuse was physical. 80% of victims do not have physical scars to prove that they're victims. And the first assault to domestic abuse and violence is a verbal assault. It's what I say to you, and it's how you interpret what I say. So most people don't look at that as abuse. Their their comments are, well, he just said a few things, suck it up and keep it moving. Or what did you do in order to make him treat you that way? It's always the victim that's being blamed, but no one wants to confront the abuser and ask him or her, why do you abuse? So while he was in Antigua, I was here in Washington State, living in a shelter, trying to figure out what to do to find my children. My, my mom became ill in Maryland, and my sister asked me to come and help to take care of her. So I left Washington State to come to Washington, D.C. area to help my mom. I went to the FBI to ask them to help me to find my children. And I told them that they were no longer in the country, which is a federal offense. My cousin is a private investigator, so he was the one that did the investigation to find out that they were no longer in the country. And I told the FBI that. So they took all my paperwork and they sent me a letter back and said, we're sorry, there's nothing we can do to help you, but since this is an ongoing case, we're going to refer you back to the FBI agency in Seattle. I called them and told them that I was running for my life, that John had kidnapped the children, and that they were no longer in the country. He said, well, Ms. Muhammad, since we know he's looking for you, what we want to do is we want to put you in the middle of a parking lot and use you as a decoy. This way, we can lure him out. I said, excuse me, sir, it's going to be a headshot. You're not going to know which way the bullet is coming from. He said, well, we're just trying to help you out. August the 30th is when I received a call from the executive director of the shelter I was living in, and she stated that they may have found my children, which they did, and I had to fly back for an emergency custody hearing to get them back. John tried to attack me in the courthouse, but we were able to get out to go get the children, and that night we came back to the D.C. area, landing at BWI. Fast forward to the shooting. They told us to look for two Caucasians in a white box truck. I was looking for that, and I was looking for John too. October the 23rd, ATF and the FBI knocked on my door, said I needed to come down to the police station to answer some questions. And it was at that time that they told me that they were going to name my ex-husband as the sniper. And they also told me that I was the intended target. So they went and got my children and my sister and brother-in-law and took us all to a hotel into protective custody until they found him. And that's a part of the story that a lot of people don't know.
I guess there are so many questions that, what you've said of the story so far brings up. My first question would be, when the authorities came to your home and told you that your husband was the gentleman behind this, and that it was all because of you, as they were piecing it together, that all the killings across the country, and a lot of people don't remember, I think, that there were a number of killings in different states before they centered around the D.C. area. But once they told you that it was all basically set up to make it look like your killing was just another out of all of those, were you surprised? Did this come as a shock to you? What was your feeling at that time?
At that time, John and I were divorced. We were divorced October 6th of 2000. And this took place in 2002. When they told me that, I was shocked. My head actually hit the table because I was in such disbelief. I just never imagined that he would do anything like that. I knew he was going to kill me. That was not a question in my mind. I didn't believe or think that he would include innocent people or create a diversion to cover up my murder, as the police put it. So we were divorced at the time all of this was happening.
I was going to say, as a mom, how old
Mhm.
were your children at the time when this was going on? And most importantly, how are they now, knowing the history of everything, especially with you publishing 2 books?
Okay.
How are they
Mhm.
dealing with everything now?
Well, they were 6, 7, and 9 at the time. They are 27, 24, and 25 now. They are doing great. Before I began speaking, I asked for their permission to speak about their dad because I felt that I needed to help other people, especially the 80% who don't have physical scars, to prove that they're victims, because so often people need to see physical pain before they will step up to help you. And they gave me the okay. They say, Mom, as long as you tell the truth, we don't have a problem with it. Throughout the whole process of writing both books, they were involved. They understood and knew what I was writing. I read a few sentences to them, and they were okay with it. Some things they didn't know, and we ventured more into a dialogue about it. I was unable to find counseling for them at the time. So I went to the library. I got a book on counseling, and I learned how to counsel me and my children myself. I created a safe place for them to discuss their dad without feeling that they would be judged or treated indifferent. I had to set up rules where they had to respect each other's opinion. They were not allowed to talk down to each other or to make one or the other feel that it was not okay for them to love and care and to love and to express their care for their dad. They needed a place to do that. And I was the best place that they had. I told them that I am your best resource for the good, the bad, and the indifferent about your dad. And even if it makes me look bad, I will tell you the truth. I did not then, nor do I now, speak badly to them about their dad, because he is their dad.
He's their dad, right? A couple of times you've alluded to people blaming you, victim blaming, for
Mhm.
this whole ordeal. Could you give us a little more examples of, exactly how did people blame you? How could they point and make you the cause of this?
Well, they said once they found out that I was his ex, they said, well, if you would have stayed with him, he just would have killed you. If you would have stayed on the West Coast, then the people on the East Coast would still be alive. How dare you bring this drama into our quiet community? And how dare you call you and your children victims when none of you were hurt or killed?
See, as a complete outsider here, that doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Right, but people need somebody to blame. They never blame or hold accountable the abuser. Had to be something I did that made him snap or go off. Couldn't have been on he made a decision to do this on his own. It's never that. Victims are always blamed for the abuser's behavior, and no one is responsible for someone else's behavior.
That's true, and that's something that everyone needs to understand, because even as a physician, I've had patients who have been domestic uh, domestic violence victims, and a majority of them, like you were saying, has been the verbal abuse. But what's even sadder is when it's the physical abuse, they always feel that it's something that they did wrong. And if I could just make him happy, I must have cooked something. I must have messed up the food. The kids must have been loud. I must have not made the bed properly. So I'm glad that you've stepped out and you've not really considered yourself to be quote unquote a victim, because it sounds like you really have come out on top of all of the situation, because your children, from what you're saying, are doing quite well emotionally, because this is a serious thing that happened to you. And of course, the victims that were affected, because I even remember that my parents were coming from, I think, South Carolina, and
Mm-hmm.
they were delayed in their travel coming back because there was a sniper attack that had just happened somewhere along 95. And
Yes, ma'am.
I remember we just stayed up and we were praying and we were watching TV that they would make it home safely.
Most times when you hear victims say, I must have done this wrong, I must have said something wrong, maybe the food wasn't cooked right, it is because a seed has been planted by the abuser. And the more he waters or she waters that seed, the greater it becomes. And then the self doubt, the self esteem starts to go, start to feel that no, there's no way I'm going to get out of this. And that's where suicide come in. Because if I can't get out of this, if I can't get somebody to help me, if I can't go to my family and friends and express to them that I need help, then my next recourse, most of the time, it's suicide. Because I can't get out.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is going to believe me. And when I go to my family and friends, and although I've been to you 4 and 5 times, you turn away. You say, I've helped you already. When are you going to leave? Why you keep putting up with that? But you don't understand that the abuser is very clever. Most of the victims' families will take the side of the abuser over the victim. Now, how does that make her feel or him feel? You like my abuser more than you love me? I mean, I grew up here, and you choosing them over me? That happens.
Yes, it becomes a very lonely situation because you would think that your friends and your family would
You would think,
understand what you're going through and
but
they
they
would
don't.
want to help you.
Well, they want to help, but they want to help you the way they want to help you. So
Mm-hmm.
it's still a control.
Yes.
So if you want to help someone that's a victim of domestic violence and you don't know what to do, then this is what I have in my book. Take this person to lunch, not dinner. But before you do that, check yourself. Set up your boundaries. What you will do, what you won't do, what you can't do. You answer those 3 questions. Will I give them money? Can they come stay with me? Am I going to drive them? Should I go in the middle of the night and pick them up? All of these scenarios need to be played out before you ask that court, before you take them to lunch. You're taking them to lunch because that's a time where their time is not checked. Everybody goes to lunch. Dinner, not a good time because you don't know if their time is being tracked or how long you've been gone. Then you may set up a scenario where the person will be harmed once they get home. So you take them to lunch. And then you ask this question. Don't ask, what's going on? You're wasting time. And that's a frivolous question because you already know, right? So the question you ask, because now you have your boundaries in place, is how can I help you?
Right.
Don't go any further. Don't say, well, I can do this and I can do that. Don't give them an out. Let this person decide how you can help them. They may be a little shocked when you ask that question because no one has taken the time to ask. Every victim knows what they need to get out. No one asks the question, how can I help you? You'll tell me what to do. You'll tell me how to do it. You'll tell me I need to leave, but you won't ask me, how can you help me? Once I tell you, you can decide then if that's something you can do. I never advocate for anyone to put themselves in harm's way trying to help your friend or family. If you're married, you should discuss it with your spouse to get them on board, and then you can decide together how or to what length are you willing to help this person. If you feel you can't do anything, at least give them a resource. The resource I would suggest is domesticshelters.org, because that is national. And you can plug in your state and your city, and you will have resources, shelters, and other legal information that can help you in your state. This is pretty new. It's about 2 or 3 years old, but it's constantly growing. Now, once you've done this, and they don't have an answer, because they may not, just say, when you're ready, just let me know. You just saved a life. You just gave that person hope. You just made them feel, I got somebody on my side. I don't have to go back feeling that I'm isolated and I'm all alone. Because that's what happens most of the time. And then when you hear about it, well, I remember she told me that, but I didn't know because you didn't ask. I didn't know it was that serious. You didn't ask. I thought, but you didn't ask.
I was going to say,
hard to ask.
You ask, but sometimes you don't listen, or you don't necessarily want the answer or the true answer that the victim is going to say to you too.
Because you haven't put your boundaries in place.
Mm-hmm. You have to be prepared. You have to prepare yourself.
You got to be prepared for the answer.
For the answer.
If you're not willing to open that door, don't ask the question.
We're speaking with Mildred Muhammad. This is Late Night Parents. Mildred, final question is, what are you doing now?
Well, I help other victims and survivors who contact me through Facebook, email. I mainly travel, speaking engagements at different organizations. I'm going to Fort Stewart and Fort Benning in October to speak to the military community on domestic violence, PTSD, suicide. 22 soldiers a day commit suicide, and we don't even know about that. 58,000 children are turned over to abusive fathers, documented abusive fathers in the court, and it's sanctioned to do that. So we have a lot of work to do, but there are a lot of people in pain, and a lot of people don't know how to express their pain. And sometimes if we don't pay attention to the seeds that are dropped from people who are in pain, we won't hear about it until they commit suicide. So I'm just trying to help people to get from living in a world of pain to understand that there's a world of peace that they can, like where me and my children live. If someone tells a victim that there'll always be a victim, that's not true. You'll never get over it. That's not true. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of emotional work, but you can get through it. I advocate journaling because you got to get that pain out of your head and put it on paper so you can see your pain. We're a visual people. If I don't see my pain, then my pain does not exist. Once you see all the pain you're going through emotionally, it's like the root of your pain is the core of an onion. As you peel back those layers, you deal with the pain within each layer, and eventually you'll get to the core, you dig it up, you look at it, you deal with it, and then you move on. And then you'll never cry over that pain again. And that's how I've been able to help me and my children to get through all of this. Because I told them, you're not going to use your dad as an excuse for failure. And I'm not going to. So you got to find another reason to tell me you can't make it. My son is an assistant manager at Helensburgh Diamond. Both of my daughters attended college. They're classically trained, and they sing classical music in 8 different languages. They've started their own group, and it's called Two Music, so you'll be hearing from them pretty soon. I mean, we're all good. They know how to point out their emotion, look it up in the dictionary, find the one that identifies or resonates with their spirit as to which type of pain they're dealing with, and then they handle it. Because you got to know why you're in that kind of pain before you can deal with that kind of pain. You got to know what you're guilty about before you can say, I won't be guilty anymore. You got to go know why.
Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy, Bill 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series, John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock.
That tear is falling, so you can say, I won't be crying anymore. But I won't tell anybody not to cry because every tear drop is one step closer to your pain. So cry as often as you need to, but just know that in the end, you're going to be okay.
Mildred, to continue this conversation online, what are the best ways, if any of our listeners are domestic violence victims, ways to reach out to you, ways to receive help?
The best way to contact me, because I travel, is through my email, and that's afterthetrauma@yahoo.com. AFTERTEETRAUMA@yahoo.com. And I will do all that I can to help you. I answer all emails within 24 hours because I don't want anybody to feel like they're waiting on a call that didn't come, because that happens to me a lot. So I won't do that to anybody.
And on Facebook and Twitter, we're following you as Mildred Muhammad, and your website, mildredmuhammad.com,
Right.
is also another wonderful resource that we can use. We want to thank you for joining us tonight, for sharing your heartfelt story and experiences. And we hope to be in contact with you sometime again in the future to find out the latest on what's going on with you and your book tour and everything else.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. But I put all of my events on my website. So if you go to my website, mildredmuhammad.com, then you'll be able to see where I am and what I'm doing.
Perfect. Mildred, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you. It was a pleasure
Thank
speaking
you.
with you.
Thank you for having me, Richard and Dr. Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.